Hello and welcome once again to episode 85 of Code Completion, a special midweek bonus episode. My name is Dimitri and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So WWDC is in a few days, so we thought we'd sneak in a predictions episode literally a few days before DubDub, because we usually release on Tuesdays and DubDub is on a Monday, so perfect time to sneak one in, especially since we didn't have a predictions episode yet.
So before we start, though, Apple TV kind of had a pop-up thing near Dimitri, so I think he's going to share some really cool photos and some swag that he got. So let's take a look at that.
Yeah. So I don't know when they started doing this. I saw that they had it so if you're in the LA area, there's the Grove. And the Grove is where LA used to be an orange grove, and it no longer is an orange grove. So that's why it's named that. But at the Grove, they had a bunch of pop-ups where they have their flagship store, and they recently moved their store across the street. It's weird stuff. It was the first or one of the first 2-level stores in Southern California. But regardless, they set up a pop-up there. And then some that came and went, and I did not go because pandemic. But I went to lunch with my mom the other day, and we went not to the Grove, but to Studio City, which is not anywhere close to the Grove. And I was very surprised to see that they had a pop-up there, and we weren't expecting it at all. We were just waiting for our table, so we decided to check it out. So if you are on the live stream, you get to see these wonderful pictures, or I guess on the recording too. Actually, no, not on the recording, just on the live stream, because this will take extra effort for Spencer to splice in. So because you see our show notes screen, you get to see these pictures. So they had a nice little how best to describe this? In major cities, they have a sign pole that shows in 5,000 miles this direction it's Paris, and in 2,000 miles that direction it's Tokyo, kind of thing. So they had one of these sign poles, but it was just of all the Apple TV shows that were set up that day. So that's what I'm showing here. And then they had I think the first thing I noticed was a Ted Lasso booth, and they had some racing seats. I don't know what that has to do with Ted Lasso, but that was there. They were themed to their colors. And in the front, you could go ahead and get some tea flavored ice cream and cookies, and you get the wonderful Believe poster.
Nice.
That got Sharpied with Ted Lasso on the other end. And it's wonderfully non-centered. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but it is what it is. And as I mentioned, you can get some ice cream. I don't have the ice cream anymore with me, but you do get Ted Lasso's famous shortbread cookies. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, they taste pretty good. They taste like shortbread cookies. Spoiler, they're not mind-blowing or anything like that. That's reserved for the magic of storytelling. So that's that. And there's my mom taking a picture. And then at another booth, there was a Severance booth. And I like the Severance booth because they had one of those old-timey computers that they do I have no clue what they're doing on them stuff. And here it is. And if you look closely, that's just an iPad. Yep, just a plain old iPad. And then they had a vending machine of Lumen goods from Lumen Industries, and I got little pretzels. So nice. On the inside, it's just literally actually a bag of pretzels.
Oh, okay, cool. I was gonna say it's not. There's actually food in there. That's cool.
Yeah, there's a nutritional information, servings per container 1, 13 pretzels.
Heck yeah, dude.
No nutritional information on this, but it does give you the allergens and stuff like that. So
good.
Yeah, that was my experience at an Apple TV pop-up.
So you just kind of were around
in.
And it was there. That's super cool. You didn't seek it out or anything, but I mean, it sounds like you wanted to go to the other one closer to you. And so would it have been the same thing? Are they just doing it kind of all
I think
over,
it is the same thing. They're touring.
Oh.
And
cool.
Yeah, all I had to do to get free swag is say yes, I know what Ted Lasso is and I watched it. That's all they like cared about. And the thing that they mentioned was, please like vote us for the Emmys or Globies, or I don't know. I live in this town, but I have no clue what on earth we do with in terms of like the film industry, despite working in it for so many years. So there was some film industry thing that you need to go and vote for, so that way Apple gets represented in some way, I guess. And that's probably what they were kind of gunning for with this.
Sure. Very cool.
But yeah, it was a fun surprise, definitely.
Perks of living in California, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, specifically in the heart of the film industry. I
Yeah,
don't think they're doing it anywhere else.
Yeah, I'd assume not, but you know, that's pretty cool. I really like all the booths are super, you know, themed and stuff, and that it'd be fun to just kind of walk around there and just be a part of, like, I don't know, that vibe, just to kind of, you know, see what's going on. Some kind of cool props and stuff, like that computer and like that keyboard looks super cool. So all of that stuff's fun that they, you know, put some, you know, cool effort
thought
into it.
Yeah, and the people that were manning the booths were like definitely into the shows that they were representing.
Nice.
And so it was fun, like discussing like, oh, what's the next season going to be? Like, oh yes, it is being filmed. There's no date yet. But like, what was up with that ending? Like, that was a lot of fun. So to discuss those kind of things,
cool,
with people that clearly know what on earth you're talking about, which is not everyone, since not everyone knows what on earth Apple TV Plus via and the Apple TV Plus app via an Apple TV is. For like non-obvious reasons, not at all because they named three things after the same thing. But
no.
Yeah, I think it was cool that they're doing it. It's cool that non-internet people get exposed to this, because I'm sure like all the internet got exposed to Severance when that finale was happening. All the internet got exposed to Ted Lasso for all 17 of its seasons. There were not 17 seasons. And yeah, so that was fun.
Nice.
Okay, that's it.
Right.
Our main topic for today is WWDC, which is in 2 days. 2 days, 1 day, depends on when we get this out. But as of right now, since it's being live streamed, you know that we are doing this at the same time, and that is going to be in 2 days. So what kind of rumors should we come to expect this year?
Yeah, I mean, we could kind of break it down into like, you know, software, hardware, and like developer, you know, API and stuff. So I think one of the biggest ones that I've seen around Twitter is like better multitasking support, windowing and everything on iPadOS, just to make it feel more like a computer, because what's a computer? You know, that'll be
certainly
cool,
iPads are not computers.
No, they're iPads. Come on. How computers? Come on.
Yep.
No, but I think that would be cool. Although I will say I think it's just with iOS 15, the you know, the little three dots at the top and being able to kind of tap that to pull things into side by side is pretty nice. So I'm not sure what the enhancement would be, whether you can just I guess the biggest thing is, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. The biggest thing is, I think, window resizing, right? So you could have multiple apps open, and I guess on top of each other is kind of the biggest thing. Am I kind of getting that right?
Yeah, so that's what the rumor is anyways. I have personally not used, despite being excited for it, I have not used throughout this entire year the little three dots, like beyond a few weeks after DubDub or a few weeks after I installed that on my main iPad. So I don't know if it just means that the apps aren't there to make me want to do something more with an iPad, or if it just or if it's not the right device to go ahead and do more. Like, I think if things were windowed and it's not like entering different modes to kind of get things all tiled perfectly, that might make it more accessible, just like in general. Like, you just move something aside, open up another app, and then you have both of them open. I wonder like how this is going to work, because there's like a patent that Apple has out where like you dock your iPad and it becomes more or less a Mac in terms of its UI. But that means that you're using it strictly with like a trackpad and not with your fingers at all. But like it's an iPad, so you're still going to be using your fingers, even though you have that trackpad and keyboard there. So I really wonder how they're going to evolve the window to be able to like accomplish that well. And I wonder if that same evolution is just going to come to macOS at the same time, or if macOS and iPadOS are still going to be fairly separate things, or perhaps like things from macOS like AppKit might make their way over to the iPad to make the iPad more powerful, because then you can have all of the Mac's like greatest apps available on the iPad. Like I would use Sketch on the iPad despite Sketch not putting any support to running on an iPad. Like I would just use it as is. And I think if Apple, I don't think Apple's going to go that route of just like enabling it as is, but if they make it very easy for someone who is like deep in AppKit land to just click a checkbox and make it available on an iPad and then start tweaking it from there, I think there's a decent chance that apps like Sketch make their way over. And I think that would be pretty cool to have on the iPad, despite it being a smaller display and stuff. But it's more or less the same size display as a MacBook Air anyways, right?
Yeah, for sure. So basically like a reverse catalyst is what you're thinking.
Yeah. So something to make things slow, I guess.
Well, it's an interesting idea, and I think it would be cool. I think the thing with that my first thought was I would personally love that. I think that would be super cool, but also I think the amount of apps that, you know, can or could go from iOS to macOS are a lot more than, I mean, there's just more apps in general than going from macOS to iOS.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it necessarily would be like a worthy endeavor for Apple. I don't know how hard it would be, you know.
Well, it's all the apps that you like use daily, right? So having the iPhone apps on the computer, like I have used zero, like despite them being available. But if I had the opposite, if I had my Mac apps on an iPad,
yes,
I would probably use them a ton. And despite the fact that there are way fewer of them, right? Like just Xcode, Sketch, like HexFiend. I'm just looking through my dock of like stuff I use daily. That's not on iOS. Like just those three, I would use it a ton if they're available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just like having, if that was the way that they put Xcode on iPad, the thing that we've been, you know, I think a lot of people have been wanting for a long time. That would be. I mean,
really they gave it to us last year, right? Swift Playgrounds. On iPad. yeah, pretty much.
So that would be really cool. You know, it reminds me, it was probably, I can't even remember. It was maybe 3 years ago or something at this point, 2 or 3 years ago, when Steve Troughton-Smith made like basically a resizing window, you know, toy app and everything. So, you know, it would be super cool to have something like that baked into the OS. Again, on something like an iPad Pro, the largest one, it's the same screen as a MacBook Air. Just like it could be a potential pain as a developer, you know, going back to, you know, the way that you have to account for Windows resizing and like macOS would now be a thing. You're not just dealing with like device sizes and in an iPad, you know, split screen and everything, but kind of everything in between. So that would definitely be an interesting thing, but maybe SwiftUI, I don't know, necessarily would help with that, but seems a little bit more flexible.
I think you kind of do get that for free, though, if you do have like an iPad app that you run on an Apple Silicon Mac. Like you can freely resize it, and it just kind of uses the size categories to kind of inform the UI. So it's not like the end of the world. I think size categories are on their way out if this is the case, because they are a hot mess to deal with. And like not at all like worth it. Did they even make it over to SwiftUI? I don't think so.
I don't know. We don't use them internally. I know that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Like anytime that I needed to like vary UI, I've completely forgone trying to use the size categories and just purely went with like if I have at least 450 pixels then or points, then I'm gonna change my UI to do something slightly different, because then you can have as many little categories as you want. And then the size categories are kind of useful to inform if you're in like one multitasking mode on the iPad versus another. But that's about it in terms of usefulness. I think that's the only like software rumor that we've heard. In terms of hardware rumors, there's a little bit more to go on. So we know for a fact, Apple said later this year in terms of the Mac Pro. Does later this year mean now? I mean, historically, for the past decade, and we can say this because there's only been two, the Mac Pro has always been announced at at WWDC, and then shipped the literal last day of the year. Like, that has been the pattern. So I expect the same. I expect Mac Pro to be announced, and then for it to ship on the last day of 2022. I think that's like the only way that a Mac Pro can be announced. Like, it's just how it is. But I could be wrong. It could be like for later this year that it gets announced and shipped, or maybe it's announced and then ships next year. Who knows?
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that. Like, I mean, November, what was it? November when like the M1 MacBook Air and Mini like were announced and released pretty closely together. I think they'll probably do like a refresh. I'm kind of combining topics now. I think they'll probably do a refresh of like the more consumer level Mac devices later this year would be my guess. Just because I agree with you that I think they'll probably, at the very least, announce the Mac Pro during WW. Just because it seems like, I mean, it's in its own class, right, in terms of performance, but also like the user base. So it feels like it would be weird for them to announce like new MacBook Air, new Mac Mini, new whatever, but also the Mac Pro at the same time, and just like muddy the waters for the general consumer to, you know, pick and be like, oh, what is this Mac? And be like, oh, this is way out of my, you know, my budget and everything. So I think having them be separate and doing what they've done, like they did in 2019 or whatever it was, 2018, with the Mac Pro would be my guess as well. And then, again, also release it like December 31st.
Yeah, because I don't think Apple has released a consumer level hardware product at WWDC since they were doing iPhones, right? Like, that was the last kind of WWDC specific consumer hardware that was kind of shown off. So it would be like, I do remember MacBook Pros, like the first Retina MacBook Pro that was at a WWDC 2012, I think, so 10 years ago. And yeah, I don't think there has been any consumer level products that were announced, so I don't think we're going to see a new MacBook Air. It would be very bizarre. That said, like, the HomePod was from DubDub, so...
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah, along with the iMac Pro.
Oh, that's so weird. Okay.
Yeah, there were quite a few DubDubs where Apple just, like, had a huge focus on, like, music. And that was, like, the focus, so the HomePod was, like, a cool thing with music. And
that no one can develop anything for.
Yeah, so it was like a giant
weird
advertising for Apple Music, and like no one I spoke to that was there cared at all. However, like when Apple had like the bass cranking for the like cylinder trash can Mac Pro, everyone was excited. Like no matter like how like everyone kind of made a joke out of it, like the years since. When it was announced, everyone was excited. So, yeah.
I mean, one, it's like hardware and it's like progress, right? Everyone's looking forward to just like the biggest, baddest thing. And not to mention that was like a huge form factor change and just this very unique thing. But also, when I was at the Dub where, and Lynn was at the very least when they announced the new Mac Pro, people were stoked. I was stoked. I mean, it's a cheese grater V2, right? I want to see what cheese grater
with
V3
super
is
fancy
this
cheese
week.
gratings
Yes,
made of aluminium.
Aluminium, baby. Johnny Ive it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'd assume, and I've heard also that they probably, I'd assume they're just blaming it on COVID and everything, but they're not gonna. Sorry. I have heard that they're not expecting new like M2 to come out this year. It'll probably be sort of like a refresh, like M1X or something. If they are gonna put new silicon in, like the MacBook Air and everything. So, and I guess also the Mac Pro probably be the M1 Extreme, which I'm still sticking to. That's the name. I'm putting, this is the second time I've put it out there. It's going to be the M1 Extreme or whatever, M2 Extreme, whatever it is, but the suffix is going to be Extreme, and I will revel in my victory. So
yeah, I think the final thing to keep in mind too is that it's kind of weird that Apple invited everyone to Apple Park this year for like the viewing party.
That's fair.
And like I was listening to ATP earlier, and apparently they have like a whole menu and itinerary set up where you can like take tours around Apple Park and stuff and see the developer center. Is that what they called it? And I think it's weird that is happening this year, despite like COVID right now on the upswing. Like it's literally all over California. It's on the upswing right now. So they must really want people there for something that they didn't think could wait another year. And if that is not the Mac Pro, I wonder if that is perhaps a preview or even just like a developer device for like AR in some capacity, right?
Yeah, that would be an interesting thought. And the rumor mill, at least I haven't seen any. Not that I'm really, my ear isn't to the ground on this kind of stuff, but I haven't heard
the
much
rumor
about
mill
the
says
AR
no, which is like weird, right?
Right.
It said yes,
Okay,
and now
so,
it's saying no.
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything, so I would be really surprised if that were the case, but I could see something like you're saying, like a developer dev kit preview or something. It's like, we're getting close, this is where we're at type of thing. Even if, yeah, either a dev kit or even just like at DubDub, they had a whole thing that was like, walk into this big studio thing, and it had like 4 different setups of actual people using the new Mac Pro, which was super cool. Like people taking photos live and seeing it on the Pro Display XDR, and someone editing a ton of tracks of 4K with the Afterburner. So I could see that happening again for the Mac Pro, and that's all it is. Kind of being more realistic, or maybe like more jaded. I don't know.
Yeah, and as you said, it could just be that. I definitely think they want people there for a reason, enough to kind of potentially take responsibility for a COVID outbreak, which I think is very likely at this point. Yeah. Even if it's outdoor, even if it's like masks for everyone, like, yeah, I'm not enthusiastic about being around a lot of people at the moment. So that might just be my like goggles informing that opinion. But if there was a reason to have everyone there, I think it would be for like potentially AR goggles, which would be the developer preview. Like develop your apps so they work really well for this. So when we have the real hardware ready in 2 years, then it's something like it's ready. Everyone is behind it. Apple kind of did this with the Apple TV. Like they had the $1 Apple TV dev kits, which were for all intents and purposes the same as or nearly identical to the final Apple TVs that people would end up buying. So there was that. I think it was like with minor revisions in between. So I can definitely see like something along those lines. I guess we'll just have to see, right?
That is true. That is true. So I think that's pretty much everything for hardware as far as I'm aware. Um, Mac
Yeah, I
Rumors,
don't
I
think
was
there are
looking
any other
earlier.
rumors at the moment
No, Mac
until we
Rumors
hear
had,
like the final ones like a day before, or hours before, right? That's when
yeah.
all of them
And
leak.
it's like, why does it matter at this point? Just, but yeah. Um, Mac Rumors has a cool thing of like what they're expecting at Dub, and it was all mostly like software in the sense of like updates to the OSs themselves. So there's a bunch on there which was super cool. Nothing like amazing, but it was cool to kind of look at and see like what to expect for iOS 16, and aside from like the windowing, that was the one thing we did talk about, but updates to, I think the one actually that was interesting to me was on the Apple Watch, there's apparently going to be like a new battery saving mode that like saves battery, but it's not like the battery saving mode where it only tells the time. It's kind of something in between where you can at the very least use apps or something, but it's not.
If it can still get my stands, like I'm instantly sold, because most of the time when I'm like nearly missing my stands or completing my rings, it's because my watch died at like 4, and I didn't know, and then I like panic because I can't like possibly finish with the remaining hours, and then once my watch comes back alive, I realize that it like recorded two stands right before it died, but just didn't sync them to the phone or whatever. So yeah, like I am excited for
Cool.
that if that is like a minute possibility.
All right, let's move on to like the developer stuff though. I think both of us would wish for better SwiftUI, so I'm interested to hear what you want out of SwiftUI. You are by far the most experienced SwiftUI user out of all of us here at Code Completion. So what is missing, or what do you hope for, I suppose?
I think that for SwiftUI to truly like take over, its previews need to work. That's like the easiest, like bare minimum
that's
in
fair.
a large app that is not like a toy app. The previews need to work, no questions asked. Like compile the bare minimum just for that file. I don't care. Just the dependencies that it needs, because it feels like it needs to compile everything and it doesn't need everything for many cases. So I think that needs a ton of improvement, like on its own. Then from there, I would say adding in for like, I don't want to be greedy and say just like make it feature complete with AppKit and UIKit, because I don't think it's going to get there anytime soon. But for any of the views that it does claim to make a bridge for, like list and navigation view and all those sorts of things, I think those need some feature completion in terms of either bridging all the pieces that need to be bridged or re-implementing them in SwiftUI like native components, such that you don't end up with a lot of the weird bridging bugs that you do end up with. Because it does need to be bridged. Like even basic things with like on appear and on disappear not really behaving like you'd think, maybe having extra events for when stuff is going to like finish animating and stuff like that. So I think having those aspects is really going to be able to take it a long way. And there are a lot of people that are like hoping that Apple makes it an external library that's no longer a system dependency. It's something that you can directly include with your app, which means that you can back deploy fixes. You don't need to like be burdened by sudden breakages or sudden fixes mid release cycle, which I think a lot of the people that have tried using SwiftUI on the Mac have just given up on it, because one release it works, and then the next release, they just broke a fundamental piece of how labels work. And the only place anyone has dared touching SwiftUI was like in preference screens where they would have labels next to pop-ups and things like that.
Yeah.
Like the stupidest of blunders seem to happen a lot. Despite the fact that SwiftUI was touted as like a super tested, like they have rigorous tests for it. And it seems like maybe that's not as robust as we thought it was. And I don't think Apple has the leeway to get away with that, if that makes sense. Like, they need to have something that's robust, especially at those levels. Fine if someone's doing something super complex and maybe some of that behavior changes release to release. But if you're in like native SwiftUI components land, there are generally no problems to be found. It's only if you're dealing with these bridged views and these bridged types. And I think it would do SwiftUI a lot of benefit to fix all of those loose edges before kind of expanding further, if that makes any sense.
Totally. I mean, especially if they're trying to tout it as like the replacement for AppKit and UIKit and say, this is the way forward. Kind of a bummer when things don't work. I think probably what you were referring to earlier was Steve Trutton-Smith with his Mac apps breaking. Probably more than him, but I saw like a thread from him the other day about that exact thing, where his apps would just randomly not work, labels won't show up or whatever. That's a huge bummer. Going back to previews, I agree. So I was doing a little bit of like very kind of auxiliary SwiftUI work in LumaFusion just for our internal use to show some previews for all of the different styles we have, like colors and corner radii and everything like that. It wasn't touching anything outside of just a single class for colors and all of that. Okay, a couple classes, but it wasn't loading up projects from the database or anything. I mean, it was very kind of small, the scope of things it was touching in the app. And every time I need to run the previews, I run it and I would say resuming preview took more than 5 seconds, try again. And everything compiles fine, but I always had to try again while I was writing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, please just like let it run. At the very least, please just let it run. Like, if everything's going to compile fine, maybe after 30 seconds, sure, but 5 seconds, I mean, I don't think it should take 5 seconds in the first place, but that was annoying to have to deal with that for like a week. So definitely.
And I think the worst part of that is it's still faster. Like, it's still faster to smash your head against the keyboard trying to get the previews to work and like trying to debug why they're not working for who knows what reason. Because it's just what you're previewing. It's not the whole app. You don't have to navigate to it. You get a whole bunch of different variations all at once. And it's maddening that it's faster to bang your head against a computer and not get any work done than it is to say build and run and wait.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
So it feels like so much more frustrating because your energy is actively being sipped away to feed the Swift preview. And yeah, there's no way that you can make it any better because you have no clue what's wrong, right?
I agree with you. I think they really do need to just improve what they have already and just make it more consistent rather than like expanding the overall functionality. I mean, there are some things that like, it's been a while, so maybe this isn't true now, but like there are some things that you just can't do in SwiftUI, like change a title or change the color of a navigation bar or something like that. There are a couple things where it's just like, it's not feature complete in the sense that there's like parity with what exists in UIKit for the things that there are native, structs for in SwiftUI, like a navigation view or whatever it is. So that kind of stuff is a little frustrating to have to like dip into UI or like dip into like UI appearance just to change that or whatever. So I don't know.
Yeah, and you have no fine-grained control over that at all. You can use a library like Introspect, maybe, if you want to like have hacky stuff like that, or you can like do that yourself of injecting a view and then just like using that view to catch the navigation view and do stuff like that. But it really does feel very broken. That such basic things just don't work. So I'm really looking forward to that being fixed.
Especially when... Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just kind of as a final thought on SwiftUI, even with all of this stuff, I still tend to gravitate towards it for new things. And so if they could make it even better, then it's like I will be 1000% sold on using SwiftUI for anything going forward. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm already 100% like willing to use it for anything, and because it is a much larger time saver, one for creativity and two for just being able to develop a small part of the app without the rest of it.
Yes.
Like all of that is so much faster with SwiftUI already that I am willing to use it despite its shortcomings for anything else. But it has such a high learning curve from when you are already an experienced UI kit or app kit developer that a lot of experienced developers don't want to touch it because they can't do the things that they know how to do very well in it. And there's a lot of changing your mentality about how to think about stuff in order to be able to use it efficiently and effectively, that it's kind of a shame that people with such a big voice in the community have been like pushing it down when it is it is so liberating to be able to use for so many different things. So it's a really big shame that they are not able to see the benefit when so many of us have been able to see it, right? Like it took energy and effort to get to this point. And if you're starting from nothing and you don't have any experience, it's possibly way easier to get started with SwiftUI than it is UIKit. But once you know how to do so many things in UIKit, it can be frustrating not being able to do those things in SwiftUI in the ways that you thought to do them, right? Like you could still get focusing on SwiftUI before they added focusing in iOS 15. You just need to do some bizarre finagling with UI view representable, right? And if you're comfortable with that, then you're comfortable with that, and it's not a big deal at the end of the day. And you can comment out that code as new versions of the OS get released. But if you don't know how to do that comfortably or effectively, then you're going to want to step back. You're going to be like, well, focusing is impossible. I don't want to touch this because the basic thing I want to do is focus the text field so the user can be effective. And if I can't do that, then it's kind of dead in the water, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, SwiftUI left a bad taste in people's mouth because at the start it was really hard, and I think it was really not there. I've said it before when Paul and I were at DubDub, when SwiftUI was released, we were trying it and it was so frustrating. But I think a part of that, it was SwiftUI itself, but also, like you said, starting from zero and being frustrated because you can't make a table view is so, it's like demoralizing. So in that sense, it's hard. But I since I've started this teaching job, I was actually just there this Thursday. The students are working on a group project, like a capstone project right now, and they're doing it in UIKit. And they said that so they have a group project and a personal project, and each one of them has to be done in UIKit and one of them has to be done in SwiftUI. And they were doing their group projects in UIKit, and they were just telling me like they're so stoked to use SwiftUI because it feels more natural to them because they started at zero from both. So that learning curve for them is probably a lot more different than it was for us, because we're like, I can't do any of the things that I can normally do, and that's just super frustrating.
And it's also the things you're trying to attain, right? If you just want to get a basic UI up, SwiftUI is so much easier than UIKit for that. And if you're trying to get something complicated, they are both capable, but the way to do them in SwiftUI is very, very different than the way to do it in UIKit. I think the thing that crystallized it in my head the best was an exercise that I did for work of building out something like a collection view or a table view, but from scratch, to have reusable views, to only have what's on screen be actually drawn. And you are capable of doing that almost entirely in SwiftUI. The only UI view representable thing I have was something to wrap a scroll view, so that way I didn't have to deal with the scroll view. But the rest of it was entirely dealt with in SwiftUI, like from calculating where views are going to be and deciding, which ones I should requests from a for each or like a closure to pass into a for each and have all of that data prepped. All of that you can do in SwiftUI, and it's just a very different way of thinking. But that code is so much simpler than it would have been to just do all of that in UIKit. Even if like I wasn't using a collection view or a table view, if I was just building out my own reusable view thing, that would have been really complicated in UIKit. But it's actually much simpler in SwiftUI because I'm just representing the final state at the end of the day, and that is much simpler to reason about. And it's just something that's very different to wrap your head around. But once I was capable of doing that, I realized that I did that in a way that works on iOS 13. Like the first version of SwiftUI. The first version was good enough to be able to do all of that. The only thing that future versions added were compatibility with existing widgets and controls that UIKit and AppKit have, like focusing, better state management so you can have it at the app level, things like that. But the basic primitives from SwiftUI, that's the word I was trying to think of this entire episode, primitives. But the basic primitives were there and they work just as well as they do now. So it took 2 years of learning about SwiftUI to get to this point. So of course, anyone just starting at SwiftUI 1 in iOS 13 felt like it was subpar because we're coming from a very different set of experiences. And it's a very different way of programming, to be completely honest, and not everyone is comfortable with that. And it's down to Apple to help make people comfortable with that. They are doing very little in terms of showing people what complicated use cases look like, because they probably don't have any complicated use cases. I probably did more in terms of building out that collection view than they have in terms of building out any sort of views internally, just because they didn't have the chance to do very much outside of building the framework itself. So I do really want Apple to be using SwiftUI a whole lot more. They're using it with shortcuts, and on the Mac, it's a hot garbage fire. And that has hopefully been a learning experience for them this past year, because in any way that they have been prevented throughout the year of building their own app, they better learn from for the next year, right? And if they can't like pick up the slack, then it really shows that they perhaps don't care enough, right? In any case, on the topic of SwiftUI, one piece that came along with it when it was announced was Combine. And Combine/Combine, depending on how confused you were seeing a common English word with a capital letter, which was everyone, did not see any improvement the second year, nor the third year, which was last year. So what we got mid-cycle instead was Swift async algorithms, and this is a bunch of async await extensions that basically add a lot of the Combine functionality to async await. So I'm wondering, does this mean that Combine is essentially set to be deprecated outside of Objective-C?
There are, parts of it that are used for SwiftUI, like observed object and everything, right? There are a couple of those.
State, published, wrappers. All of those are Combine.
Yeah. So other than that, though, no one's like using, publishers outside of that, except for Andrew Mattson. So I don't know. Definitely not as widely used, at least from my kind of realm of viewing code.
So I have had the pleasure of using it in the latest app that I've been working on, and for the most part it's been a pleasure, like using it with Notification Center, using it with key value coding. Like I'm never going to touch regular key value coding again, because this makes it so easy to use. Same with Notification Center. Like you don't have to have a crazy block anywhere that's maybe being held onto, maybe not. You just use the same pattern from Combine, and that makes it really simple to operate with. And yeah, so that's where I've used it. I haven't built my own publishers. I've not felt the need to do that, and maybe it's just because I don't know like how to effectively do it in a way that's going to benefit me. But I have written a lot of async await code, and I have written a lot of async sequence extensions, and those are so much fun to like play around with, and they're dead simple to use at the call site. So I have a feeling that will likely take on. I was very surprised Apple released the async algorithms as a like package that can like evolve completely separately from Apple's frameworks. I think that's going to be a telltale sign that this may not replace or deprecate Combine, but will continue to have a whole bunch of functionality be added to it in a way that anyone could use for almost any version of their app, because it's just a bunch of functions at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter if those the ones that you use anyways get built in as a part of your app, because likely they will be inlined anyways, because that just makes them a whole ton faster. So if they're inlined, then they're in your app anyways. So there's not too much benefit from Apple's shipping them as a dynamic library on their systems. So I think that if Apple focuses on it, there will most definitely be a session on async algorithms to show you how to use them. But if Apple focuses on it a bit more, I think that will be welcome.
One that I have is better intercompatibility with like checking the iPad on app or iPad app on Mac, whatever it's called, and like Catalyst apps kind of along with that. But we have an M1. We call it the M1 version, but that doesn't really work now that iPads have M1s. But an iPad, like a Mac version of LumaFusion, that works on Macs. I'm being very redundant here. Sorry. The problem with it is there's just like weird jiggery pokery that happens sometimes. Like the one that I ran into this week and also like a year ago was things with UI menus and like, for example, a contextual menu when you like right click on something works completely fine on iOS with a trackpad, right? But then when you and it's like UI menu action, I think is like the subclass, or I think it's a subclass, not a protocol. But then, and so, you get that, you say, hey, if it's this kind of menu action subclass, do this thing, whatever. But then inexplicably when you do the exact same thing on Mac, it is the object that gets returned to you is a UI menu controller, and it's like not even an action, it's the entire controller. And so you can't cast that. The properties don't exist. If you try to cast it and use the properties,
it's like a private class on top of it, right?
Yeah, it just crashes because it's like, that property doesn't exist. And I'm like, I guarantee you it does exist. So there's just weird like some kind of bridging thing that's happening in the background that just makes some things like so stupid that you have to work around. So I don't know what I'm getting at with this. I just wish things would work.
Frustrated by it, and I want it fixed.
Yes, exactly. So it's just have them work the same on both platforms, please, because we're running ARM on both of these. It's not like there's any translation that needs to happen in that sense from like an architecture standpoint. So whatever they're doing to make it work is frustrating sometimes. So that is my rant.
Watch in the new version, since windowing is coming to the iPad, you get the UI menu controller on iPad as well, and then you're out of luck.
At least it would be consistent, and I could have one fix instead of like a normal implementation and then some stupid workaround. So if it's just the stupid workaround, then I guess that's what it is.
So yeah, in the spirit of complaining to Apple via our very small platform that they can't listen to, or they don't listen to. I'm sure they can if they wanted to. Better monitor management on macOS, please. I have a Mac Studio. It is not going anywhere. It is on the desk. The monitors that are plugged into it are plugged into it. They aren't going anywhere. You can assume that they will always be there. It's the same port there, and I'm not going to switch them around on you Mac
No
OS.
I/O changes.
No I/O changes. Like, I'm not even turning off the Mac Studio. Every time it goes to sleep, my two side monitors, sometimes they'll switch backgrounds. Sometimes the windows on this one will go to the center one, and the center windows will go to the right one, and then the right one will stay on the right one, because why not? All the windows will just like realize that the system woke up and then resize as if they were like doing shenanigans while the system was asleep. I don't know. But windowing is a hot garbage mess, and needs to be fixed and addressed, because like, we have a system that can run 4 Pro Display XDRs. I am afraid to have 4 Pro Display XDRs attached to that thing, because that's 4 monitors that are exactly the same. Who knows how it's going to get confused about it. Here, I just get the two side ones confused, because those are the same dimensions. They're even flipped in different angles. So that gets remembered for some reason. But the desktop backgrounds, no, that regularly just swaps. The windows that are on there, no, I can't rely on that at all.
Just gotta keep you on your toes.
I am kept on my toes, and I'm tired of it. My toes are starting to hurt.
That is a problem then. Yeah, I agree. That's dumb.
Like, I get it on the laptop that it's janky, but it's a desktop. Please.
It's because you're in the chaotic evil part of the little monitor grid that got sent out. I thought that was awesome, dude. They don't care about chaotic evil. One thing that... Okay. I was in my kitchen yesterday, and I was like watching a YouTube video while I was eating lunch, and I just wanted there to be, like good sound not coming out of my phone, but just like a better speaker. I was like, you know what? I should get a HomePod for this. And I started looking, and there's like the HomePod Mini. I was like, I'd love a HomePod Mini in here. But then I was like, but I really want like a real, like I have a HomePod, but it's in another room. But I just want like, some nice loud sound. I love my HomePod for as much as people don't like it. I love my personally. So I want them to give me a HomePod too. That would be awesome. It's so weird. You go on the Apple Store website, and it's like, or the Apple Store app, and it's like HomePod Mini. That's it. We don't have a normal HomePod. It's just the mini one. It just bugs me. So I hope that they have a HomePod too, and I guess they could have it support like lossless playback now that that's a part of Apple Music or whatever. But that would be my just like super selfish wish. Like, I know they didn't sell super well. Sounds like the HomePod 2s or the HomePod Minis are pretty good. Like, I know you have a bunch. Fernando has a bunch. Having them be $99 is really nice. So I almost bought one the other day, and then I was like, I should wait until after Dub just in case they announce a HomePod 2.
Well, you can always move the HomePod Minis to like your bathroom and have that control the switches. The best use case for having HomePods in the bathroom is when you're listening to podcasts. You can just like have it follow you wherever you're going.
That's fair.
And it's just like in every room you have a HomePod, and it is the best thing ever. So yeah, get HomePods and put them everywhere. And if you have any minis now, you can always relocate them. Like, they can just go in a smaller room, like a bathroom.
Maybe I'll do that.
Yeah. I have a feeling that if Apple comes out with like a HomePod 2, HomePod Max to Pro Ultra, whatever they want to call it, I have a feeling that if they say that it has lossless support now, people are going to have like side-by-side videos of the original HomePod playing music and then this one playing the lossless track, and either coming to two very different conclusions. One, oh my gosh, it sounds so much better, and that's just because the speakers are different. Whether it's better or not, it's completely arbitrary, but it just like sounds different because the speakers are different. Like, you can play the same track and they'll sound different. So it's either that, or they sound identical despite it being the lossless version, because that's not how digital music works. And like, unless you're doing edits on the music, the lossless version is worthless to you. And yeah, you won't be able to tell that with your ears. So Like, I get it between like a compressed version and like a super compressed version and a regular compressed version. Yeah,
Sure.
you'll tell the difference there. But a high quality compressed version versus lossless, good luck.
Well, and I think there's just like a psychological thing with like, oh, I've got the lossless thing, so they could totally like market it that way and say, oh, but this one plays lossless, haha, it's supported. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It would be a marketing point, if anything, I think. But
That said, it seems like a lot of people's original HomePods are like dying on them. So mine,
oh no,
knock on,
yeah,
I guess, wall, have not started to die on me yet, and they work fine. The only like downside, which is 100% software, is I have them hooked up to my TV, and they're my ARC source, despite like me using just the Apple TV most of the time. But when I wake up my Apple TV by pressing on the little power button, the TV turns on, the Apple TV turns on. All that is great. No audio will play until I press volume up or down, and that is like the silliest thing. And like it's part of the routine now. I wake up the thing, when it wakes up I press the volume up, and like it's all good from there. But that's silly. That should be fixed.
yeah. I always get jealous because my parents have a HomePod Mini, and they'll like tap the Mini to like put stuff on the HomePod and stuff, and I have to use the software side and hit the button in Control Center and have it play that way.
Navigate through 17 screens to get it to play.
Brutal. I want an easier way. I paid $300 for that thing, so yeah. That's all.
There's I guess there are some rumors that Apple might be coming out with new Airport Extremes. Like, so basically, nice. Wi-Fi has not changed since they released the last set of Apple Airport Extremes, at least from Apple device point of view. Like, we have nothing that's really taking advantage of Wi-Fi 6. And with an Airport Extreme, you can get over a gigabit via Wi-Fi. It's just over like that one connection, so it's not for like tons of computers
devices
at once. But like, I use Airport Extremes in my house, and I have 100 devices that are connected between like wall switches, different computers, iPads, iPhones, all sorts of smart devices. Like, it's really loaded onto them, and they work fine for all intents and purposes. So that is the reason that I saw that Apple kind of was not focusing on like airports anymore, because like they waited 10 years and nothing changed. I think it was also at DubDub that the last Airport Extreme, the Type N, not the Type N, but the AC, sorry. N was like AC. Really long time ago. But AC is the most recent like fast standard, apart from Wi-Fi 6E, which is the next like level up from AX. There. And like none of Apple's devices use that. Yeah, I think there's like 1 or 2 devices with Wi-Fi 6, like the phones. But they are not necessarily using the full capacity of that. It's basically just a more energy efficient version of what AC is being used on laptops and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to Apple potentially like upgrading Wi-Fi across the board, and nice. Potentially having new airport devices. And maybe those new airport devices, like the whole reason why I went down this rabbit hole, is maybe they are HomePods. Like, that would make a ton of sense. In terms of so like cool. Putting them a little bit everywhere, having them all be mesh connected to kind of propagate the Wi-Fi signal throughout someone's home or outside. So I think that is probably the gateway for that to be a reality.
That would be super cool. I think I have had the worst luck with routers ever since I've been living on my own. I've gone through like 4 routers. They'll die fairly consistently on me, and I spent like, I don't know, $250 or $300 on like a mesh setup, and it works okay, but I would love something that works consistently, and having it be like a HomePod as well would be super cool.
I would never trust the mesh setup. My tactic around that is to get some blue masking tape and a long Ethernet cable and just like tape that along the room,
I know.
the ceiling, and get it to whatever room it needs to be, going under the door. And that has been rock solid. So yeah, treat yourselves to some blue masking tape all over your home. I think that is going to be way more reliable than any mesh setup in terms of having a consistently stable experience.
Sure. I'll stop by Home Depot. That would be such a cool kind of fusion of devices. And like you said, if you have them all over already, like for things like, what do they call it? Not walkie-talkie, intercom. That kind of stuff. Just multiple reasons to have multiple of those devices. That's such a cool idea. I've never thought of that, but now I want it even more. And
yeah, because then that's like a good motivation to have them everywhere.
Capsule. Mm-hmm. Yeah, put 4 terabytes in it, and make it a time capsule too, and let me just back up my stuff too. I don't know. I mean, I want everything.
Why 4 terabytes at this point? Like the 3 terabytes was like a big disk back when those came out. So like big disk nowadays is like 16 terabytes. Let's not do 4 terabytes. It doesn't need to be fast. It's just a time machine.
Although, yeah, I mean, it would definitely have to be flash. Imagine having a spinning hard drive next to just like this gnarly subwoofer. Maybe not a good idea.
Oh, good point. I mean, I was just so the time capsules actually start dying at about now. If you bought them back when 2016, I think the tall like tower ones came out, right. And they die for the like sole reason. And that reminds me, I need to repack my iFixit toolkit. Because I needed to fix my mom's time capsule, not because she uses it or cares about the time capsule part of it. Again, 3 terabytes. But internally, the time capsule needs a fan to cool down the hard drive that's in it. And that fan, I guess over time, like loses the grease that keeps it spinning.
Right.
And therefore it becomes something that just does not work anymore. And the fan just like is deadlocked. And if the fan is deadlocked, that means that it's not going and actually cooling down the time capsule, which is essentially an Airport Extreme with a hard drive in it. Like literally the internal guts of an Airport Extreme are the same thing minus the hard drive and minus the control board for the hard drive. That's the only difference. And it's fairly simple to take apart. And it's fairly simple to put some plumber's grease back in the little axle of the fan and try not to break the tabs as you open it up. But yeah, I've done it to all of mine because things were dying on me like about 2 years ago. And I got them all fixed, and it's something that you just need to do. It's like regular car maintenance, except for your Airport Extremes, because they're still kind of the most stable routers there are, except the fans were dying because they're just so old. So yeah, if you have an Airport Extreme / time capsule and it's like giving you the amber blinking dot of overheating, if you look in like airport utility, then consider just popping it open. It's like there are 3 clips along each side. You get a little sludger tool in there. That part pops off, and you just kind of follow the screws, and you're basically in. There are 2 screws at the very bottom that need a long neck screwdriver, but other than that, it's fairly simple to open up and then get inside, get at the fan, and put some plumber grease in there to actually repair that. Get spinning again. And that reminded me that I need to do that again, because I apparently did not put enough plumber grease, because I like took the thing apart, got it in, made sure the fan kind of spun a little, like plugged it all back in and left. Never verified that it worked. Mm-hmm. And it did not work. So I need to go back in there and kind of fix it again. But yeah, I will make a mental note of that to do it later.
You're welcome. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I was looking at with, when in my quest for an actually working router, is they have like HomeKit compatible routers. I don't know what you would do. Yeah, it's a Linksys one or a Netgear one. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you would monitor on there, but that would be super cool too.
No,
I'm sure it would be HomeKit compatible.
So specifically, the HomeKit compatibleness of it means that any HomeKit devices that connect to it get connected to a separate network. And those
that's
devices
so cool.
don't see any of your devices.
Right.
So you can see them, but they can't see you. So that means that like if they get hacked, like you're not too worried about it.
That makes way more sense.
That said, I think Linksys has like completely done a horrible job at like actually shipping this. I looked at a few reviews and it's like, oh, it's never actually got implemented, and like a patch came out really late and like tanked the stability. So I was like, yep, nope, not buying these.
All right, well, there we go. Another reason for Apple to make its own, so it can actually integrate with HomeKit well.
Yep. So yeah, I'm excited for next week, mostly because I don't have any clue what's going to be announced, and I'm usually like super excited throughout the week. And yeah.
I mean, like we talked about, I think it was a couple weeks ago when we kind of talked about like the developer app and everything. Like we're talking a lot about like announcements and stuff. And there's a lot more to Dub than just, like the keynote and State of the Union and stuff. But I'm just in general, I'm excited about new, sessions on whatever there is, whether it's, again, if we get better SwiftUI, it's not just about better SwiftUI, but like seeing the sessions and kind of getting a jump start on all of this new stuff that's coming out. So yeah, I don't know. For me, it kind of like sets the tone of like, okay, what am I going to be learning for the next year or so? So it's always fun to, just be a part of kind of the whole vibe that is Dub for the entire week of like new announcements, but also just getting kind of a refreshed willingness to learn new things, I suppose.
Yep. And excitement to build all sorts of fun things.
Yep.
So with that said, thank you so much to everyone who streamed in, and to Spencer, who was at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SpencerCurtis on Twitter, for joining me this week. A reminder that we'll be streaming on Monday right after the keynote. So that's in 2 days if you're listening now, and if you're listening slightly after now, imminent. So right after the keynote and State of the Union, like I think an hour afterwards at 4 p.m. Pacific time, that's when we will be recording. So keep an eye out on Twitter at Code Completion. So we will tweet out a live stream link that you can go ahead and listen to. And yeah, my name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñuel. That's DimitriBouniol, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. I did get the Opal C1 camera, but we'll save that for 2 weeks from now, I guess, when we have a calm episode to talk about it.
Did you already get it? Like, is it delivered?
Yeah, it's on my monitor over there.
Nice.
I have not used. I've like plugged it in to like see it, and it works. But I've not used it for any actual like call yet. So
cool.
Yeah,
that'll be good.
Yeah, you can actually see it on the very edge of the camera. I can't see it on the the Riverside thing, but you can see it on the actual recording.
Is it white?
Yeah, it's a little white thing right there.
Oh, cool. I thought they only came in black. That's cool.
Yeah, black and white. And it's a nice finish. It's not like pure white. It's kind of like speckled.
Yeah, the finish is really cool. It looks really nice.
And my favorite thing so far, I guess minor spoilers, is it has a magnetic like lens cap. So there's like an inner felty material, and then it just like clicks in place, and I was like, that is so nice. So yeah, really looking forward to giving that a try, and then I'll give a full review when I do.
Nice.
And yeah, I think that's it.
Should we shut it down? Or do you want to do a commented out?
I think that was my commented out.
Okay. All right. See you guys.
Bye.